Millionaire took his mistress on a yacht while his pregnant wife went into labor in the rain. They say storms don't announce themselves before they strike, and sometimes neither do betrayals. On a night of thundering skies and relentless downpours, a drama more violent than nature itself unraveled. Andrew Caldwell, a self-made multi-millionaire known for his incredible real estate empire, supposedly had everything a man could want: wealth, power, and a devoted wife, expecting his child. Yet as that same wife went into labor, Andrew was miles away on a private yacht with his elusive mistress. The rain poured in torrents, fate spun its darkest web, and a set of carefully guarded secrets threatened to tear an entire family and a fortune apart. The Caldwells were the kind of family people revered and envied in equal measure. Andrew Caldwell's name was practically synonymous with high-end real estate in New York. Whether he was closing a deal for a luxury penthouse overlooking Central Park or investing in condominiums in Dubai, Andrew possessed an uncanny ability to transform risk into wealth. He'd grown up in a modest home in Syracuse, raised by parents who taught him the value of hard work. From his early 20s, Andrew made a vow to never again experience the financial instability of his childhood. He worked tirelessly, sometimes unscrupulously, if rumors were to be believed, to ascend the social and economic ladder, determined to become a man of substance. He married Clara Simmons at the age of 32. She was a quiet, poised woman, the daughter of an old-money Boston family that believed in philanthropy and tradition. While Andrew's rugged business tactics clashed with Clara's gentle approach to life, they seemed to complement each other in all the right ways. Clara's upbringing in a philanthropic environment lent Andrew's empire a veneer of social responsibility. She helped steer some of his profits into charities and community programs. The public saw them as an unstoppable power couple, a modern fairy tale where the ambitious outsider found true love with the refined debutante. Their Manhattan penthouse dripped opulence. A private chef, a walk-in wine cellar featuring rare vintages, and marble floors that seemed to reflect the city lights all contributed to the myth of their perfect marriage. Whenever the paparazzi caught them stepping out of a limousine in matching designer outfits, the tabloids rushed to dub them the golden couple. It helped that Andrew had a presence about him, tall, confident, with broad shoulders and a commanding stare. Clara, on the other hand, was the picture of polished elegance, her every movement reminiscent of high society courtesy. Together, they were unstoppable, but illusions are delicate. Behind closed doors, Andrew and Clara's emotional connection had begun to fray. Andrew's endless quest for success demanded relentless hours at the office, late-night flight hops to London, or last-minute deals in Asia. Days became nights and nights, blurred into weekends. Clara found herself more and more alone, especially as her pregnancy became more difficult. It was in these silent stretches, in her solitude, that she discovered how vulnerable she really felt. Andrew was no longer the warm, caring man she believed she had married. He was transforming into a shrewd, often distant magnate whose affection was as fleeting as his presence at home. Even so, if there was one thing Clara learned from her mother, it was to keep up appearances for the sake of respectability. She dutifully attended social functions, philanthropic galas, and charity luncheons, always wearing a gentle smile that concealed her anxieties. She never let the world see her doubts or her tears. To outsiders, her pregnancy seemed to promise a new chapter in their perfect marriage. A baby would surely bring them closer. Yet, deep within her heart, she was haunted by a nameless fear, a premonition of betrayal and heartbreak. Little did she know, the storm was indeed coming, one that would erupt on a night she needed Andrew the most. The mistress, Serena DuPont, was a name whispered behind closed doors by New York's elite, although no one had concrete proof that she had captured Andrew Caldwell's eye, or so it was rumored. Serena was 25, a French expatriate who stepped onto the Manhattan scene under mysterious circumstances. Some said she came from a wealthy lion family that had lost everything. Others claimed she was a talented painter who had seduced one of her patrons for financial gain. Whatever her origin, Serena possessed a sultry magnetism, dark hair that framed her olive-toned face, eyes that sparkled with latent danger, and a physique that turned heads wherever she went. She entered Andrew's life at a pivotal point. He was in search of a new marketing strategy for his overseas properties and decided to host a cultural exhibition. Serena, with her purported artistic background, volunteered her curatorial services. At the grand opening of the exhibit, which showcased emerging European painters, she mingled expertly with wealthy socialites and potential investors, providing Andrew with precisely the sophisticated cultural air he wanted around his real estate expansions. The event was a stunning success, bringing in new investors and creating a social media buzz that turned Andrew's business into a name recognized not just in New York, but across major European capitals. In the weeks that followed, Andrew found himself unable to resist the gravitational pull of Serena's worldliness. She was so unlike Clara, with her demure demeanor. Serena bristled with an energy that he found intoxicating. Their first intimate encounter happened under the guise of work, an after-party celebrating the success of the exhibition, hosted in the penthouse suite of an upscale Manhattan hotel. Champagne flowed like water, and as the city lights formed a luminous backdrop to Serena's graceful silhouette, Andrew felt an electric chemistry he hadn't experienced in years. Drinks turned into whispered confessions, and whispered confessions turned into a single night of heated passion. In the cold morning light, Andrew woke with a gnawing sense of guilt, recalling how Clara had texted him a sweet goodnight message, unaware of his betrayal. He tried to ignore the pang, rationalizing that his marriage was already losing its spark, and that his dalliance with Serena was merely a harmless fling that rejuvenated him. Yet the harmless fling soon extended into secret lunches, stolen weekends in the Hamptons, and eventually grand escapades on a private yacht anchored off the coast of Florida. Serena was ambitious and cunning. She recognized that Andrew was not just another wealthy playboy, but a highly influential figure in global real estate. By winning his heart, or at least his attentions, she could secure her own seat at the table of affluence. She had no qualms about stepping over Clara's claims, about the unborn child that was about to come into the world. For Serena, life was a game, and if Andrew Caldwell could offer a path to the top, she was more than willing to play. Late in Clara's third trimester, she began to suspect something was amiss. Andrew's phone calls from work trips became suspiciously brief. The company offices had a sophisticated phone system that recorded every call for security purposes, and one day, out of both curiosity and a creeping dread, Clara asked Martin Gray, Andrew's long-standing friend and chief legal counsel, to let her hear some of the recorded messages Andrew had left for her. Clara had never meddled in Andrew's business, but her instincts told her something big was going on, something that threatened her marriage. Martin was torn. On one hand, he owed his loyalty to Andrew, who had raised him from a junior attorney to the top legal mind in Caldwell Enterprises. On the other hand, he also cherished Clara as a close friend and believed she deserved to know if Andrew was, in fact, embroiled in an affair. So Martin hesitantly shared only a snippet of a conversation Andrew had with a woman who was definitely not an investor or a business partner. The endearments, the insinuations, it was all there. Clara felt her world tilt. She questioned whether she should confront Andrew or gather more evidence. Ultimately, she chose the latter, a strategy that she felt would give her clarity and preserve her dignity. She hired a private investigator, Christopher D. Johnson, a retired NYPD detective with a reputation for utter discretion. Christopher discreetly followed Andrew across the city, snapping photos of him entering and leaving exclusive restaurants with a mysterious brunette. The photographs eventually showed Andrew and Serena boarding a private jet, presumably heading to Florida for a weekend getaway. The final images made Clara's blood run cold. Andrew had his hand on Serena's waist, leaning in to give her a tender kiss. Hurt and rage clashed inside Clara. How could Andrew do this while she was pregnant, vulnerable, and about to bring his child into the world? But what hurt even more than the betrayal was the depth of deception. She realized this wasn't a passing infidelity that Andrew would outgrow. This woman was a fixture in Andrew's secret life, a threat to all Clara held dear. She thought about leaving him immediately, but every time she placed a hand on her swollen belly, she hesitated. After all, the baby deserved a father, no matter how flawed. Uncertain of her next move, Clara chose to keep her discovery a secret, at least until she could plan a more decisive response. As Clara entered the final month of her pregnancy, the crisp autumn air of Manhattan transformed into a somber grey sky. Thunderheads loomed in the distance, occasionally casting flickers of lightning across the horizon. The city's weather forecasts warned of an impending tempest, but Andrew Caldwell seemed utterly indifferent to such cautions. Indeed, as the days grew shorter and the temperature dropped, he announced, much to Clara's silent dread, a crucial business trip to Miami. For someone as savvy as Andrew, who prided himself on checking every angle before making a move, his timing was suspiciously poor. Clara was over 38 weeks pregnant. She could feel the baby shift and press against her ribcage more heavily with each passing day, a poignant reminder of how close she was to giving birth. Yet Andrew was set on flying to Florida to finalize a high-profile real estate partnership aboard the Golden Dream, his prized 120-foot yacht. He detailed the trip in carefully practiced tones, listing the potential investors he was scheduled to meet. "They're all expecting me down there," he told Clara, avoiding direct eye contact. "It's a chance to expand Caldwell Enterprises into new waterfront developments." She nodded along without challenging him, too tired to protest. But in the back of her mind, she replayed the rumors, the glimpses she'd had of an unfamiliar brunette in his orbit. Even if she didn't confront him directly, her heart pounded with apprehension whenever he casually mentioned investor, mingling, or private hospitality suites. She had enough pieces to suspect that this business trip involved Serena Dupont, the same mysterious woman her private investigator had photographed in Andrew's vicinity. On the night before his departure, Clara found herself sitting in the nursery. The pastel walls, lined with children's books and plush toys, only heightened her sense of foreboding. She was folding baby clothes, tiny socks, soft cotton onesies, trying to steady her breath against the silent drumbeat of worry. A single question plagued her. If Andrew was away and something happened, who would rush to her side? She had a flurry of new doubts. Despite having close friends and a mother who promised to visit, she knew that Andrew's presence was meant to be her pillar of strength. Except he was leaving. Early the next morning, Andrew slipped out of the penthouse, designer suitcase in hand. Clara walked him to the door, wearing a faint smile she had perfected in public, yet now wore in private too. A hushed tension shimmered between them as he leaned in to kiss her cheek. "I'll be back before the baby arrives," he murmured, though they both knew it was an empty promise. Hours later, Andrew's private jet took off from Teterboro Airport, destination Miami. Meanwhile, in Manhattan, the skies turned ominous. Rain began to patter on the windows of the penthouse, slowly at first, then more insistently as gusts of wind buffeted the tall buildings. News updates warned that a major weather system was taking shape near the Gulf of Mexico. There was potential for strong winds, heavy rainfall, and localized flooding along the eastern seaboard. Clara, aware of these forecasts, tried not to imagine Andrew's yacht in the path of a brewing storm. Across the country, Andrew and Serena were indeed boarding the Golden Dream, moored just off the coast of Miami. The yacht's sleek lines cut a striking figure, and its interior boasted marble floors, velvet upholstered lounges, and a state-of-the-art kitchen staffed by a private chef. Everything about this vessel exuded luxurious escapism, the very thing Andrew craved when he needed to distance himself from the moral complexities of his life in New York. Serena, draped in a chic sundress, was already on board, her hair brushing against her shoulders in the humid Florida breeze. She greeted Andrew with a playful smile, as though she had been waiting for him to arrive and whisk her into another world. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to indulge in the fantasy that the responsibilities awaiting him back home could be put on hold. But Mother Nature had other plans. As the Golden Dream pulled away from the marina, the winds began to pick up. The first few droplets of rain dotted the polished teak deck, and soon the captain advised them to keep an eye on the weather reports. From the bridge, he could see dark clouds rapidly converging from the south, a glaring omen that the unsettled Gulf storm was bigger and fiercer than initially anticipated. Andrew, at first, waved off the warning. He was accustomed to controlling everything: markets, boardroom negotiations, even the public narrative of his marriage. A little rough weather wasn't going to change his schedule, or so he thought. In Manhattan, the rain escalated into a downpour. Clara, returning from a baby shower organized by her friends, struggled to exit her vehicle without soaking her coat. The doorman of her building rushed to shield her with an umbrella, but the gale force wind nearly wrenched it away from him. Drenched and shivering, Clara leaned against the marble walls of the lobby, feeling an ache in her lower back. She told herself it was nothing, just the fatigue of late pregnancy mingled with the night's tension. Then it happened. A sharp, radiating pain tore across her abdomen, momentarily stealing her breath. She gasped, reflexively reaching for the smooth surface of the wall to steady herself. It subsided quickly, leaving her heart pounding. Braxton Hicks contractions, she thought, forcing a steady exhale. Yet that nagging voice in the back of her mind refused to quiet. She was alone. Andrew was miles away, possibly afloat in stormy waters with his mistress. The notion made her heart twist in hurt and anger. As the evening progressed, the contractions began to intensify. Clara paced the penthouse, switching on soft lamps, calling her closest friend to describe the pain. By midnight, the intervals between contractions narrowed, and a dread realization sank in. Her body was initiating labor. The baby had decided it was time to meet the world's storm or no storm, faithful husband or not. With trembling hands, she dialed 911. Within minutes, an ambulance was en route, sirens echoing through the rain-soaked streets. On the Golden Dream, Andrew stood by the large picture windows, gazing at the relentless sheets of rain battering the yacht. The storm raged louder than the music in the lounge area, overshadowing the clink of champagne glasses. Serena hovered nearby, her expression uneasy. They both felt the vessel rock more violently with each passing swell. A sudden beep on Andrew's phone caught his attention. He lifted the screen to see repeated calls and frantic messages from Martin Gray, his longtime friend and legal counsel. Something was terribly wrong. His heart hammered as he read the urgent text. "Clara's in labor. She's going to the hospital now. Where are you?" Thunder cracked overhead, as if to punctuate the gravity of this news. Andrew swallowed hard, a wave of guilt and panic seizing him. The illusions of carefree indulgence with Serena shattered in that instant. He was no longer the master of his own universe, orchestrating pleasurable escapes at will. Life had forced his hand. He needed to be with Clara, needed to witness his son's birth. Yet he was stranded in a storm, trapped in the very lie he had spun. And so, as Clara was rushed through rain-slicked streets to the hospital, Andrew fought a growing tempest, both outside and within. In that singular moment, everything he feared, exposure, public scandal, and the unvarnished truth of his betrayal, was as unstoppable as the thunder rolling across the sky. The storm had gathered, now it was about to break. On the Golden Dream, the atmosphere was a stark contrast to the drama unfolding back in Manhattan. The yacht's interior was an opulent playground complete with a hot tub, a fully stocked bar, and staff trained to cater to every whim. Serena was dressed in a flowing silk robe that clung to her figure, while Andrew lounged in casual designer shorts and a crisp shirt, swirling a glass of whiskey. The yacht swayed gently as the storm began to intensify, but for Andrew it was just a minor inconvenience until the Coast Guard issued a warning about potential gale force winds. Serena wandered over, pressing her lips to Andrew's ear. She whispered suggestions that they anchor somewhere safer for the night or even head back to shore. Andrew, stubborn and emboldened by his self-made success, dismissed the warnings as exaggerated. "A little bit of rain can't hurt us," he said. However, the yacht's captain insisted on taking precautions, especially as the wind speed escalated. Andrew finally relented, instructing the crew to steer toward a more sheltered cove. The storm's center was still miles away, but its outlying bands were already lashing the open water with sheets of rain. Between the thunderclaps and howling wind, Andrew's phone buzzed. He normally put his phone aside during his romantic escapes with Serena, but something compelled him to glance at the screen. There were multiple missed calls from Martin Gray. Normally, Martin didn't call so persistently unless there was an emergency. Andrew scowled, considering ignoring it, but a second wave of buzzing forced his hand. He stepped outside into the pelting rain, seeking a quieter spot on the deck. "Yes?" he barked into the phone. "Andrew." Martin's voice crackled with urgency over the static. "Clara's in labor. She's at the hospital right now. Where are you?" Andrew froze. In that moment, a fist of guilt slammed into his chest. Time seemed to slow, the howling wind momentarily overshadowed by the roaring in his ears. He realized that while he was out in the middle of the ocean with his mistress, his wife was about to give birth to his child. All of his well-crafted excuses and rationalizations crumbled. He cut the call short, promising Martin he'd find a way to get back immediately. When Andrew turned to Serena, she recognized the gravity in his eyes. "What happened?" she asked, stepping closer, her robe whipping in the wind. "Clara's in labor," Andrew said, his voice hollow. For a split second, an array of emotions flitted across Serena's face: surprise, maybe even envy, but certainly no sympathy for the woman laboring in a hospital. She must have known on some level that the child Andrew was expecting would form a permanent bond between him and Clara. And if Serena had any illusions about Andrew leaving Clara for her, this child complicated everything. "We have to head back," Andrew said. Without waiting for her response, he dashed into the pilot's cabin to demand an immediate return to shore. But the storm had escalated, and the captain informed him that it would be near impossible and extremely dangerous to navigate directly for port in such limited visibility and strong winds. They would have to wait until the worst of the storm passed, or risk damaging the yacht and endangering everyone on board. Time was not on Andrew's side. As he argued with the captain, the boat lurched violently, thunder shaking the windows. Andrew gripped the railing, cursing himself. The life he had so meticulously built, the illusions he had so carefully maintained, were disintegrating in one catastrophic night. Clara was alone, giving birth amid a torrential downpour, and he was trapped at sea with the other woman. Back in Manhattan, Clara lay on a hospital bed, her contractions rolling through her in relentless waves. The bright lights of the delivery room did little to dispel her sense of isolation. Nurses flitted around, adjusting the fourth lines and offering her sips of water. Each contraction was more agonizing than the last, and each time she gasped for air, tears blurred her vision. She looked around, clinging to the hope that Andrew might walk through the door at any moment. But deep down, she knew where he was and with whom. Her obstetrician, Dr. Penelope Harris, was a compassionate, middle-aged woman who tried her best to offer reassurance. "You're doing great, Clara. The baby's heartbeat is strong. Just keep breathing." But every time the door to the corridor swung open, Clara's heart leapt, only to crash in disappointment when it was just another nurse or medical technician. Time blurred in a haze of searing pain and heartbreak. Outside, the rain battered the hospital windows. Lightning occasionally flickered across the sky, illuminating the city in ghostly flashes. News channels in the waiting room flashed images of flash floods in some parts of New York. Martin Gray paced anxiously in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, attempting once again to reach Andrew. Each time, the call either went straight to voicemail or the connection was lost. Finally, Clara felt the urge to push. Despite the swirl of emotions threatening to consume her, an instinct older than heartbreak took over, her maternal drive. With Dr. Harris's guidance, she mustered every ounce of strength to bring her child into the world. In a burst of pain and adrenaline, with sweat and tears mingling on her cheeks, Clara gave one final push, and a tiny, piercing cry filled the room. A rush of relief and euphoria swept over Clara as the nurses placed a squirming baby boy in her arms. He was small but feisty, with a shock of dark hair and a pair of lungs that announced his presence to everyone within earshot. The moment she touched his warm, fragile body, her anger and sorrow receded into a distant corner of her mind. This was her son, her miracle. She named him Theodore James Caldwell, the name she and Andrew had decided on months ago. Only Andrew wasn't there to confirm or celebrate. As she cradled Theodore, tears streamed down her face, a testament to both joy and devastation. The nurses began the post-delivery procedures, but all Clara could do was stare at her newborn. She whispered comforting words, letting him grip her finger with his tiny hand. She promised him that he would never be alone, that she would be strong enough for both of them, even if Andrew couldn't be. Meanwhile, on the Golden Dream, Andrew paced the main salon, phone in hand, waiting for an elusive signal. The storm had intensified, and the yacht's powerful engines were straining against the swells. Every attempt at calling Martin or the hospital resulted in dropped connections. Rain hammered the windows, and thunder made speech nearly impossible. Outside, the deck was slick with water, forcing the crew to work carefully to avoid accidents. Serena stayed in the background. She watched Andrew's agitation with a mixture of concern and calculation. A part of her understood she might lose him if this turned into a catastrophic marital crisis. Yet another part of her believed Andrew was too entangled in their affair to simply walk away. She thought carefully about her next move. In the early hours of morning, the storm began to calm enough for the captain to chart a course back to port. Andrew raced to the upper deck, urging the crew to accelerate. He needed to be in Manhattan, needed to see Clara, needed to salvage what was left of his marriage, or at least gauge how irreparable the damage might be. The yacht powered through choppy waters, inching closer to the shoreline. Andrew imagined Clara alone in the hospital, facing one of the most transformative and daunting experiences of her life without him by her side. As soon as they were within range of stable cell coverage, Andrew's phone pinged incessantly with messages and missed call alerts. Martin's texts were urgent. Clara gave birth. It's a boy. Where are you? Andrew felt queasy reading the words. His son, he had missed his child's birth. No amount of business deals or hush money could undo that. In that moment, he realized the precariousness of his situation. The story had all the makings of a scandal. The millionaire father absent during his wife's labor because he was off gallivanting with a mistress. And if the tabloids got wind of it, the Caldwell brand could be tarnished irreparably. Not waiting for the yacht to fully dock, Andrew instructed the crew to have the speedboat tender prepared. He took a quick glance at Serena. I have to go. You understand that, he said, avoiding her gaze. Of course, she replied coolly, stepping forward to give him a kiss that felt more like a claim. Just remember that I'm part of your life too. She let the words linger, an unspoken ultimatum in the air. Andrew nodded tersely, then climbed down to the speedboat, heading for the harbour. Andrew arrived at the hospital hours after Clara had given birth. He sprinted through the corridors, drenched from the rain and reeking of seawater. Martin met him outside the maternity ward, his face a mask of disappointment. Before Andrew could speak, Martin grabbed his arm and led him into a nearby vacant waiting room. You know I've always had your back, Martin said, voice simmering with anger. But this time, I don't know how you'll fix this. Clara went through the delivery alone. She was terrified. Andrew ran a hand over his soaked hair. Let me see her, he pleaded, guilt choking his throat. Martin hesitated, then nodded. Room 512. Andrew hastened down the hall. He found Clara propped up in bed, holding their newborn son. The overhead fluorescent lights cast a stark glow across her pale face. She looked exhausted and fragile, yet there was a fierce protectiveness in her gaze as she stared down at the sleeping infant in her arms. When she lifted her eyes to meet Andrew's, an avalanche of emotions passed between them: pain, anger, and a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he had a valid explanation. He approached tentatively. Clara, I'm so sorry, he began, voice trembling. I got stuck. There was a storm. Clara's lips twisted in a bitter half-smile. A storm, she repeated, bitterness dripping from her tone. Where were you, Andrew? And don't say business trip. I've known about you and Serena for weeks. Andrew's eyes widened. You how? She shook her head in disbelief. I'm not naive. Did you think I wouldn't notice your late nights, your sudden trips? I hired a private investigator, Andrew. I have proof. Silence ballooned between them. Even the machines in the room seemed to hum in disapproval. Andrew glanced at his newborn son, his heart clenching. This was not how he wanted to meet Theodore for the first time, in a room thick with betrayal. Clara, He didn't even know where to begin. I was a fool. I never meant to hurt you. Things got complicated. But I'm here now. A tear slipped down Clara's cheek. You missed his birth, Andrew, she whispered, choking on her words. No amount of apologies will change that. The moment Theodore came into this world, you were absent. Andrew felt an ache deep in his chest, the gravity of his choices suffocating him. He stepped closer, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand. Clara didn't stop him, but she didn't move aside to make room for him either. Theodore stirred, his eyelids fluttering before he returned to the security of his newborn slumber. Andrew stayed silent, hoping the tenderness of this new life might form a bridge between them. But the bitterness that marred Clara's expression made it clear this was a wound that would not heal easily, if ever. Word travelled fast in high society, and the rumour mills kicked into overdrive. A nurse, starstruck by Andrew Caldwell's presence, leaked a snippet of information to a friend, who then informed a tabloid writer. By the next morning, the headlines ran, "Real estate tycoon Andrew Caldwell misses son's birth, spotted on yacht in Florida storm." Paparazzi besieged the hospital, hoping to capture an image of Clara or newborn Theodore. Within hours, Andrew's PR team was in crisis mode. They scrambled to release statements clarifying that Andrew was caught in an unforeseen storm during a business trip and did everything possible to return for his child's birth. However, rumors about Serena DuPont's involvement could not be contained indefinitely. Whispers of an extramarital affair ran rampant. Social media lit up with condemnation and curiosity. Some called Clara a martyr, a saintly figure who had been wronged by a philandering husband. Others speculated that it was merely a publicity stunt to keep Andrew's name in the papers. At the hospital, Clara was besieged by calls and texts from concerned friends and curious acquaintances. Her mother arrived from Boston, appalled by the scandal, threatening to eclipse her grandson's joyful arrival. Family tensions simmered as well, with Clara's parents demanding she return to Boston with the baby, away from Andrew's disloyalty. Andrew tried in vain to contain the fallout. He paid hush money to staffers on the yacht, ensuring their silence about Serena's presence, but it was likely only a matter of time before paparazzi photos or private investigator pictures of the two together surfaced. Even if the affair became public, Andrew still hoped to salvage his marriage. In a moment of desperation, he asked Clara to move back into the penthouse once she was discharged. He promised they would seek counseling, that he would end whatever he had with Serena. But Clara was too shattered to make any promises of her own. She avoided any discussion of reconciliation, focusing solely on her newborn's immediate needs. Each time Andrew attempted to bring up the future, she deflected, refusing to give him the solace he sought. Within days of the media storm, Serena found herself demonized online. She was labeled a homewrecker and gold digger. A few unscrupulous tabloid photographers managed to snap her leaving a luxury hotel in Miami, fueling speculation that she was the mystery woman on Andrew's yacht. Serena felt the heat of public condemnation, but was confident Andrew would shield her. After all, he had always been generous, paying for her upscale apartment in Manhattan and her lavish lifestyle. She believed she had significant leverage on him, both emotional and financial. However, after the baby's birth and the ensuing scandal, Andrew became increasingly distant. He ignored her messages and calls, consumed by the chaos in his marriage and public image. Alarmed, Serena traveled to New York without warning, determined to confront him. She found him in his office, a fortress of tinted glass and modern art, nestled in the top floors of Caldwell Tower. He looked up, startled by her unannounced entry. "Serena," he said, an edge in his tone, "you shouldn't be here." She closed the door behind her, leaning against it. "Are you really going to pretend I don't exist? That what we had never happened?" Andrew bristled, stepping away from his desk. "It's complicated. You see what's happening? My personal life is a circus. I need to focus on Clara and my son." Serena's voice trembled with both anger and hurt. "And what about me? Am I just a fling you can discard now that reality has caught up?" He exhaled, unable to meet her gaze. The guilt was almost unbearable. "I never promised you anything. You knew my situation." She let out a bitter laugh. "You can't be serious. You lavished gifts on me, promised me a future, maybe not in so many words, but in every action. And now you want to cut me off?" Andrew struggled to maintain composure. "I don't know what you want me to say. My wife just gave birth to my son. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to set them right. I'm prepared to compensate you, help you relocate, if that's what you want. But there can't be anything between us anymore." The silence that followed was electric. Serena's face hardened. "Fine. You want to throw me away? Then don't be surprised if I don't go quietly. The media is hungry for a story. Think about the damage I could do if I decided to talk. Andrew stiffened. He knew Serena was capable of such a move. If she sold her story to the tabloids, or worse, to a rival developer or unscrupulous investor, his entire empire could suffer. She had knowledge of sensitive business deals, potentially damaging details about his personal finances. Don't do something you'll regret, he warned, voice low. Serena threw him a disdainful glance. Regret? I've already got plenty of that. Then she pushed past him, slamming the door on her way out, leaving Andrew alone and grappling with a vortex of looming threats. Clara spent her first week of motherhood in an emotional haze. Sleepless nights blended with the heartbreak of Andrew's betrayal. She was determined to breastfeed Theodore, to bond with him in every way possible. Her mother and a close friend helped her adjust, changing diapers and assisting with feedings. Andrew tried to show support by stopping by every day, bringing expensive baby gifts and stammering apologies. Clara said little, focusing on Theodore as her sanctuary in an otherwise tumultuous life. One rainy afternoon, Clara decided to open up to Martin Gray. He had been a trusted confidant, and she needed an external perspective free from her family's emotional entanglements. They sat in the hospital's cafeteria, sipping lukewarm coffee. I don't know if I can ever forgive him, Clara admitted, tears welling up. The betrayal is one thing, but abandoning me when I needed him most, that feels unforgivable, Martin sighed. I can't defend Andrew's actions, but I've known him most of my life. He's driven, and that ambition got the better of him. I won't make excuses for him, but I also know he loves you in his own flawed way. Clara stared at her coffee cup, the steam curling into the air like fading hope. Is it enough? Love can't undo what he did. No, it can't, Martin agreed gently. But sometimes, even with a betrayal this deep, couples find a path forward if there's genuine remorse and a willingness to rebuild trust. The question is, do you want to try? Clara's mind raced through every possibility. Staying meant constant reminders of Andrew's infidelity. Leaving meant her son would grow up in a fractured home, though possibly a more peaceful one. I can't decide that right now, she finally said, her voice trembling. Martin nodded, placing a comforting hand over hers. Whatever you choose, just remember you have support. As the days progressed, Andrew tried to make amends in any way he could. He ended all contact with Serena, much to her fury, and started couples therapy sessions at Clara's request. Though reluctant, Clara agreed to at least attend one session, unsure if she was truly ready to rebuild. In the midst of this, Serena did not go quietly. Tabloid rumors escalated, Andrew Caldwell's mistress, to spill shocking details. The rumor was that she was writing a tell-all. Andrew's business associates whispered about potential deals unraveling if public sentiment turned too negative against the Caldwell brand. Real estate is as much about image as it is about capital, and Andrew faced the imminent threat of losing everything he had built. However, fate had one more trick up its sleeve. During a weekend press event meant to repair Andrew's public image, a fundraiser for a children's hospital, the paparazzi caught pictures of Serena entering a rival real estate developer's office. That developer, Ryan Blackwood, was infamous for using scandal to sabotage his competitors. The images quickly circulated, fueling speculation that Serena was in negotiations to sell insider information. Andrew went pale when he saw them. If Serena possessed any sensitive business data, deals in progress might crumble, not to mention potential legal ramifications. Though Andrew had severed personal ties with her, she was still a looming threat. And with her meeting Ryan Blackwood, it appeared she was ready to escalate. Andrew's only hope was to stymie the crisis before it exploded. One afternoon, while Clara was resting in her newly refurbished bedroom, having reluctantly returned to the penthouse for the sake of convenience, and the baby she heard muffled voices downstairs. She made her way quietly to the living room. There, to her astonishment, was Serena Dupont and Martin Gray. They stood facing each other amidst the modern furniture, tension crackling like static electricity in the air. Clara's heart pounded. Why was Serena here? She considered walking away, but curiosity and a flicker of anger rooted her to the spot. Eavesdropping from around the corner, Serena's voice was low but firm. "I need to talk to Andrew, but he refuses to see me. So I came here. I'm not looking to cause more drama. I just want to make sure he understands that Blackwood approached me. I haven't given him anything yet." Martin's expression was implacable. "Andrew doesn't want you here, and frankly, you're the last person Clara wants to see." Serena sighed. "Look, I'm not proud of what happened. I was drawn to Andrew's power, his everything. But I never intended for it to turn this ugly. Blackwood offered me a small fortune to dish dirt on Andrew, but I came to tell him personally that I refuse. I might be a lot of things, but I'm not a traitor." A moment of heavy silence followed. Clara felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, disbelief, suspicion, and though she never expected it, an odd sense of gratitude. If Serena was telling the truth, it might spare Andrew a financial catastrophe. Yet it wouldn't undo the hurt she caused by intruding into Clara's marriage. Martin nodded slowly. "All right. I'll deliver the message. Now, please leave." Serena turned to go, but paused as if sensing Clara's presence. When she saw Clara standing there, baby Theodore in her arms, a flicker of regret passed across her eyes. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it, offering only a sad nod before slipping out the door. Clara stood there, stunned. Even in the midst of betrayal, life is rarely black and white. She retreated to her room, her mind swirling with new questions. Had Serena truly come to wave a white flag? Or was it all a manipulative game to keep Andrew's goodwill? The discovery that Serena had rebuffed Blackwood's attempt at sabotage gave Andrew a fragile sense of relief. He decided to focus all his energy on saving his marriage, or at least ensuring Clara felt supported. He attended every doctor's appointment for Theodore, joined parenting classes that Clara's mother recommended, and participated earnestly in their first couples therapy session. It was awkward and emotionally raw, with Andrew voicing his remorse and Clara unleashing her pent-up hurt. Their therapist, a patient woman named Dr. Louise Eldridge, guided them toward open communication, focusing on the question, why did this happen? Andrew admitted that he felt pressured by the image of being the perfect husband and successful businessman. He confessed he was terrified of not living up to Clara's expectations, and in that fear, he sought an outlet that made him feel powerful and desired. It was a sobering acknowledgement for him to make, tearing down the confident facade he had presented to the world. Clara, in turn, realized that she, too, had built a pedestal for Andrew to stand on, ignoring signs that he was struggling under the weight of it all. She expressed how deeply betrayed she felt, how the entire ordeal had eroded her sense of security. Yet, beneath the bitterness, she still felt a glimmer of love, that intangible thread that first drew her to Andrew. She wasn't sure if it was enough, but it was there, however faint. Over the course of several sessions, they came to a crossroads. Either they commit fully to repairing their marriage, or they part ways amicably for the sake of their son. Andrew wanted desperately to make amends, but he also knew Clara needed time. The future was uncertain, but at least they were talking, facing each other rather than turning away. Andrew, guided by his PR team, took steps to show the public he was a devoted father. He started a new philanthropic initiative in Theodore's name, pledging millions to maternal healthcare programs. He made fewer business trips, allocating more responsibilities to trusted executives. When asked by a reporter if he regretted being absent for his child's birth, Andrew offered a humble statement: "It's my greatest regret, and I'm determined every day to become worthy of my family's forgiveness." The tabloids slowly shifted their narrative from scandal to redemption arc, capitalizing on images of Andrew cradling Theodore or gently kissing Clara's forehead when they were spotted leaving a pediatric clinic. Clara maintained her composure, allowing the cameras to capture carefully orchestrated moments, but she remained guarded. In a final twist, Serena publicly announced she was taking a leave from New York's social scene to return to France. She gave a brief interview stating that she had no intention of profiting from personal matters. Many took it as an indirect attempt to salvage her own reputation. Andrew never spoke to her again. Whether she truly had a change of heart or simply realized the short-lived affair couldn't offer long-term security, she exited their lives without further destruction. Months passed. Clara and Andrew settled into a tenuous routine, co-parenting Theodore and attending therapy. There were moments of closeness, fleeting instants where a smile or shared laughter hinted at the possibility of love's revival. Then there were nights of cold distance, when the magnitude of Andrew's betrayal reared its ugly head in Clara's mind. Despite the storms, literal and metaphorical, Theodore thrived, becoming a symbol of innocence amid adult transgressions. One night, Clara sat in the nursery, rocking Theodore to sleep, pondering her next move. Should she stay in a marriage marred by deceit? Or should she break free, forging a new path for herself and her son? She glanced at Andrew, who was standing quietly in the doorway. Their eyes met. Words were unnecessary, for they both knew the path forward was uncertain, a labyrinth requiring both time and courage to navigate. In the end, life is rarely simple, and neither is love. Andrew Caldwell learned that all the wealth and power in the world cannot salvage a marriage built on secrets. Clara discovered that strength and self-worth grow most fiercely in times of heartbreak. Their son, Theodore, became the binding force that might yet offer them a chance to heal a fragile hope suspended between remorse and forgiveness. Whether Andrew and Clara's relationship will endure remains an open question, but sometimes the greatest storms yield unexpected rainbows, illuminating a future that, however dim, still brims with possibilities. Thank you for following this emotionally charged journey, filled with betrayal, heartbreak, and glimpses of redemption. If you found this story gripping and worth sharing, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life and reminds us all that even in life's darkest moments, hope can still shine through. Millionaire attends mistress's checkup. Pregnant wife left to deal with her complications alone. The day the rumors started, whispers of betrayal spread like wildfire through the opulent hallways of the Harrington mansion. Nannies, maids, and family friends caught fleeting glimpses of a secret visitor, a striking brunette whose presence was anything but innocent. When Julian Harrington, wealthy heir and charismatic businessman, suddenly took a keen interest in helping out a friend, his pregnant wife Sophia began to sense something sinister beneath his polished exterior. Little did she know that friend was more than just an acquaintance. In a world of luxury cars, sparkling jewels, and silent heartbreak, a shocking truth was about to unravel and forever change the course of their lives. Sophia Harrington stared at the shimmering crystal chandelier above her head, momentarily hypnotized by its soft, dancing lights. Resting a gentle hand against her rounded belly, she took slow breaths to calm the swirl of emotions in her heart. She could hear Julian, her husband, downstairs in the foyer, his voice echoing through the corridors as he spoke on the phone. The Harrington mansion was an imposing estate in the affluent outskirts of Greenwood Hills, A neighborhood of winding roads, lined with perfectly manicured hedges and security-guarded gates. Growing up in a modest family, Sophia often felt awestruck by the opulence that now surrounded her daily life. Marble floors, richly woven carpets, and art pieces from every corner of the globe decorated every room. Yet, that very opulence sometimes felt like a gilded cage. She recalled the early days of her relationship with Julian, a whirlwind of romantic dinners in Paris, stolen kisses in shadowy corners of exclusive clubs, and dreams whispered under starry skies. But something had changed in the past few months. When they discovered she was pregnant, joy had surged between them, promising to bind their hearts forever. Sophia believed that this baby would bring them closer, forging a new sense of unity and purpose. Except the unity never came. Julian's late-night phone calls increased, along with hushed conversations that ended the moment she walked into a room. Expensive gifts appeared as though to compensate for an emptiness between them. On the outside, she kept up the appearance of the content, beaming wife after all. The Harrington name demanded nothing less. But beneath her calm smile, anxiety grew day by day. She tried speaking to her mother, Maria Ross, about it. Maria was no stranger to heartbreak. Divorced twice and fiercely protective of her only daughter, she wasted no time warning Sophia that a man disappearing at odd hours and evading questions spelled trouble. Still, Sophia trusted Julian. He was the man she had married, the father of her unborn child. Despite the uneasy twinges that twisted in her stomach, she told herself that maybe he was overworked. Maybe his secretive behavior was due to a business deal that required confidentiality. It was during her second trimester appointment that the first real crack appeared. Sophia had quietly waited at the OB/GYN's office, dressed in a lavender maternity dress that gently hugged her growing belly. She'd felt excited, anxious, wanting her husband by her side when she learned about their baby's health. Instead, Julian was late. Her calls went unanswered, her text messages ignored. When the nurse called her in, she still hoped she'd see him rush through the door at the last second. But he never did. That evening, Julian had blamed an emergency meeting. He'd seemed distracted, furrowed brows, eyes flickering around the room, anything but the heartfelt apology she longed to hear. Still, she forgave him. Everyone made mistakes. Everyone had stressful days at work, yet a tiny kernel of doubt formed and wouldn't let go. A week later, she found a delicate silk scarf in the passenger seat of Julian's car, embroidered with the initials EM. She had never met anyone in Julian's inner circle with those initials. Though her heart pounded in her chest, Sophia told herself there might be a logical explanation. Perhaps it was a client's scarf. Perhaps it belonged to one of his business associates. She refused to let paranoia infect her marriage. However, the final straw came when her longtime friend, Amelia Henderson, paid her a visit for afternoon tea. Amelia was a columnist at a local lifestyle magazine and often attended the same high society events as Julian. Over chamomile tea and chocolate scones, Amelia confessed she had seen Julian leaving a luxury spa with an attractive woman rumored to be a model or influencer. Amelia said the woman had her arm lightly looped around Julian's. The rumor swirling around Greenwood Hills was that this woman, one Elena Monroe, was more than just a casual companion. Sophia felt her cheeks burn in embarrassment and betrayal. She fought to keep her composure, but on the inside, her entire world threatened to implode. In that very moment, her baby kicked, as if sensing the turmoil ravaging its mother's heart. Gathering her trembling hands around her midsection, Sophia forced herself to breathe. She wouldn't jump to conclusions, but she also couldn't remain blind. "Are you sure?" Sophia asked Amelia, voice quaking. Amelia nodded solemnly. "I'm only telling you because you deserve the truth." That night, Julian arrived home from work, a half-hearted smile on his lips. Sophia approached him in the living room, her stomach a swirl of dread and anger. "Who is Eleanor Monroe?" she asked in a trembling voice. She caught the fleeting flicker of panic in his eyes before he quickly suppressed it. Then, with the practiced ease of a seasoned businessman, Julian told her Elena was an important client from overseas, part of a new business acquisition. "I needed to make sure her stay here was comfortable," he said, adding that he had only been assisting her with real estate deals. "You know I handle a lot of wealthy investors, darling. Let's not jump to conclusions." Sophia inhaled slowly, watching his face for signs of deception. She had known Julian for years. She could read him better than anyone. Yet, it was growing harder to discern where the truth ended and the lies began. For the sake of her unborn baby, she decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. Though a sharp sting of suspicion lingered, she forced a shaky smile and gently kissed his cheek. "I'm sorry for doubting you," she managed to say, the acrid taste of betrayal still burning on her tongue. Unbeknownst to her, that would be the first of many false reassurances and half-truths. The stage was set for a betrayal that would cut deeper than any heartbreak she had ever experienced. And while the golden chandeliers continued to dazzle in the Harrington mansion, the facade of a perfect marriage was beginning to crumble. 3 weeks later found Sophia reclined on a plush chaise lounge in the living room, sorting through baby catalogues and colour swatches for the nursery. She wanted everything to be perfect: a soft pastel theme, adorable stuffed animals, and a crib that epitomized safety and comfort. Though she had prepared a cheerful vision of what she wanted, her mind drifted to Julian's repeated absences, the hush money she heard him talk about on the phone, the perfume that clung to him some nights, spicy and exotic, unlike anything she wore. When Julian was physically present, it was as though he existed only in body, his thoughts miles away. She would lie awake at night, her hand resting protectively on her stomach, replaying every odd conversation and sideways glance. Still, each morning she dutifully woke up, reminding herself to see the best in her husband. They were supposed to be a team, and soon they would be a family. One late afternoon, after a prenatal class that Sophia attended alone, she returned home to find Julian kneeling in the foyer, rummaging through a black duffel bag. Paper rustled inside, a sound that stirred curiosity and alarm in equal measure. She called out to him softly, and he jumped as though burned by a hot iron. "Sophia, you're back early," he said, eyes shifting guiltily. Her gaze landed on crisp envelopes stuffed with cash. They looked like banknotes, far more than typical pocket change. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Julian cleared his throat, zipped the bag shut, and forced a smile. "Office deposit. It's easier than dealing with the wires for certain deals," he offered, as though that explained everything. Sophia hesitated, but nodded. She had learned not to press questions too far, that only pushed him into anger or silence. Regardless, an uneasy sensation gnawed at her. She recalled the hush money reference she had overheard. Could these wads of cash be connected? That evening, after dinner, Julian vanished into his home office. Unable to silence her nagging doubts, Sophia crept down the hall and pressed her ear to the door. Muffled voices trickled through, and while she couldn't make out every word, 2 lines crystallized in her mind. "Julian, yes. Elena, I'll be there for the next appointment. Don't worry. I won't let you handle this alone. Julian, yes, I understand the risks." Sophia's heart thundered in her ears. The name Elena was repeated, and they were talking about an appointment. For weeks, an avalanche of signs had pointed her to one grim possibility: Julian had a mistress. Now, it seemed that Mistress was pregnant. The mere thought caused Sophia to stumble back, almost losing her balance. Her mind whirled with questions: why? How long? And most importantly, Was he truly fathering another child? Instead of confronting him that night, Sophia waited, deciding to gather more evidence. If her fears were confirmed, she needed clarity about what she would do next. In quiet desperation, she reached out to her mother again, but Maria was traveling, unreachable for the next few days. Amelia was her only confidant, but a sense of shame held her back from confessing everything. The following afternoon, with trembling hands, she dialed the phone number of Daniel Mulligan, Julian's trusted chauffeur. Daniel had worked for the Harringtons for years, practically part of the household, though loyal to Julian first. Sophia asked him if he knew anything about a Miss Elena Monroe. There was a tense pause before Daniel admitted that he had driven Julian and Elena to various appointments. He refused to say more, but it was enough to confirm the dreadful truth. Sophia was left reeling. She nearly dropped the phone, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. Despair mingled with an odd sense of relief finally. She had confirmation that she wasn't imagining things. As pain warred with anger, she felt protective of her child. It wasn't just about her heartbreak, it was about the well-being of a fragile life forming inside her. Summoning her last reservoir of courage, she decided she would confront Julian directly. She refused to live under the veil of suspicion any longer. That night, after a silent dinner, she found him in their bedroom, reading through some documents. "I know about Elena," she said, voice trembling but determined. Julian's eyes snapped up, alarm shining bright. "Sophia, what are you talking about?" She refused to let him dismiss her. "I heard you on the phone, and Daniel told me you've been taking her to appointments." "What's going on?" For a moment he hesitated, guilt written across his handsome features. Then he let out a long, drawn breath. "Sophia, it's complicated. Explain," she demanded, tears threatening to spill. "She's pregnant." "But it's not what you think," he hurried to add, but his words stumbled. Her fiancé walked out on her. "She's an important client. She invests millions into my business ventures. She's threatened to pull out if I don't help. She's sleeping with you," Sophia blurted out. She wanted to clamp a hand over her mouth, to stem the vile taste of her accusation, but it was too late. His jaw tensed. "We made a mistake, but I'm just trying to do the right thing now. She's not stable, and I can't risk her going to the press, tarnishing the Harrington name, or letting my investors think there's a scandal. But you have to believe me, I never wanted this." Sophia stood there, unable to process the torrent of revelations. So it was true. He had made a mistake. He had betrayed her trust, their marriage vows, everything they had built. She felt a wave of nausea and heartbreak so intense that she had to hold onto the bedpost for support. The betrayal left her mind reeling with 1,000 questions, each more painful than the last. Did he love Elena? Was this relationship ongoing or a one-time lapse in judgment? And what would become of her own unborn child in this twisted scenario? The answer came in Julian's pleading tone. "Sophia, I need you to understand I'm being blackmailed. Elena threatens to reveal everything if I don't provide financial support for her, among other demands. If that happens, my company will collapse and will be ruined. You and the baby, everything I've built for us gone." At that moment, Sophia realized he was trying to justify his continued involvement with Elena as a necessity. Fury replaced some of the heartbreak. She felt used, manipulated, and worst of all, left alone to carry the emotional burden of a complicated pregnancy. She glared at him through a film of tears. "And what about me? Our baby? You're out there hand-holding your mistress while I'm facing complications alone. Don't I deserve more than that?" Julian reached out for her, but she shrugged his hand away. She couldn't stand his touch. The seeds of resentment took root, and she realized that everything had changed. Her heart pounded with adrenaline, warning her that the road ahead would be dark and fraught with dangerous twists. "Stay away from me tonight," she whispered, tears finally coursing down her cheeks. "I can't look at you." He opened his mouth to protest, but eventually retreated, leaving Sophia alone in the bedroom they once shared as a sanctuary of love and trust. In that solitude, she wrapped her arms around her belly, whispering soft reassurances to the tiny life within. She vowed to protect her child, even if it meant standing against the man she once believed would always be her hero. In the days that followed, Sophia moved like a ghost through the Harrington mansion, silent, withdrawn, carefully avoiding Julian's attempts at conversation. In turn, Julian became an even more infrequent presence, always leaving early and returning late. When he was around, he appeared haunted, eyes shadowed with stress. The staff whispered in hushed tones, uncertain whether to approach Sophia or maintain their strict boundaries. Weighing heavily on her mind were her obstetrician's words from the last appointment. "We need to monitor your blood pressure. Sometimes stress can trigger complications that threaten both you and the baby." The heartbreak amplified her anxiety, as though her very body was revolting against the constant emotional turmoil. She tried to follow the doctor's recommendations: rest, light exercise, minimal stress, but with each passing day, her stress levels soared ever higher. Unable to confide in anyone within the Harrington circle, Sophia turned to an unlikely source for help: Michael Stevens, Julian's longtime friend and lawyer. The day she mustered the courage to dial Michael's number, she paced in her private sitting room, heart pounding. She explained the basic outline of the situation: Julian's affair, Elena's pregnancy, the threat of blackmail, and how desperately she needed guidance. Michael's voice came through the receiver, calm and collected. "Sophia, you need to protect yourself, both legally and financially. I have to remain loyal to Julian in professional matters, but I'm also a friend to you. Let me see what I can do without compromising either side." Though she didn't fully trust him, he was, after all, Julian's confidant. His measured words offered a semblance of relief. Michael hinted that he had suspected something amiss for quite some time, noticing unusual financial transactions and overhearing tense arguments between Julian and Elena. He agreed to discreetly gather information. If Sophia could track down definitive proof of any wrongdoing or blackmail, they might have leverage to end Elena's hold on Julian without annihilating the Harrington empire. Later that evening, Michael called back with news. His tone was urgent. "Sophia, I found a contact of Elena's, a man named Marcus Ward. He's a private investigator who once worked for her, trailing certain wealthy men. It seems Elena has a pattern. She zeroes in on powerful, wealthy men, lures them into a fling, and then orchestrates a scenario that forces them to pay hush money. Sometimes she claims pregnancy, sometimes it's evidence of an affair that she threatens to sell to tabloids." Sophia's heart clenched at the revelation. So Elena was no hapless victim, but a con artist. "Are you sure about this? Julian claims the baby is real. According to some rumors, she might indeed be pregnant," Michael replied, "but paternity is another story. She's done this before with a media mogul in Los Angeles only that time. Paternity tests proved the child wasn't his, but the scandal alone nearly destroyed him." Sophia felt a simmering rage expand inside her. So Elena might be manipulating them both, using the baby real or not to extort financial gain. That possibility made her blood run cold. As much as she felt betrayed by Julian, she also recognized the labyrinth of deception they were both trapped in. "I'll need proof," Sophia said quietly, "and I need it before something terrible happens." Michael promised to connect her with Marcus Ward. It was a desperate move, trusting a stranger who once worked for Elena. But Sophia found herself with no other option. If she didn't gather evidence, Julian's destructive path could drag her and her unborn child down with him. Days blurred into one another. As the pregnancy advanced, Sophia felt the weight of it in every step she took, in the dull ache in her back, and in the persistent fatigue that clouded her mind. She tried to focus on the baby's first flutters, on the excitement of soon becoming a mother, yet heartbreak overshadowed everything. During that tenuous period, she refused to let the staff fuss over her any more than necessary, desperate to cling to her dignity and independence. She was in her second trimester checkup at the hospital when the real blow came. Sitting on the examination table, clad in a hospital gown, she anxiously awaited results of her blood pressure test and an ultrasound. She glanced at the empty seat beside her Julian's seat, aching with the reality that he wasn't there. He had promised to attend, claiming he wanted to be more supportive. But an hour before the appointment, she got a text. "I'm sorry, meeting ran late. Next time, I promise." Next time, she thought bitterly, wiping away a stray tear. As the door opened, Dr. Patel entered with a sympathetic expression. She explained that Sophia's blood pressure was alarmingly high, and it posed a risk for preeclampsia, a dangerous condition if not managed carefully. "You need to reduce stress," Dr. Patel emphasized, "and will schedule more frequent appointments to monitor you closely." Sophia nodded numbly, a heavy pit forming in her stomach. The baby's heartbeat fluttered across the monitor, a sign of life and promise that ignited both hope and terror in her chest. She was determined to protect that tiny heart at all costs. But how could she reduce stress when her marriage was unraveling and a cunning mistress threatened everything? After the appointment, Sophia navigated the polished corridors of the hospital, heading toward the exit. Suddenly, she spotted a familiar figure in the distance, Julian, wearing a tailored grey suit, standing by a reception desk. Her heart lurched in confusion. He appeared anxious, glancing at his watch every few seconds. Then, to her immense horror, Elena Monroe stepped out from a nearby hallway. She was radiant in a form-fitting maternity dress that showcased her burgeoning bump. Together, Julian and Elena spoke with a nurse, who handed them a small envelope, likely an ultrasound image or test result. Sophia froze, stunned by the sight. The realization struck her like a physical blow. Julian had missed her appointment because he was at Elena's checkup. A rush of rage threatened to shatter her composure. She pressed herself against a corner, hoping neither would see her. Eyes brimming with tears, she watched as Julian escorted Elena down the hallway, his hand lightly on her back in a gesture of concern. Concern, the very thing he had failed to show for his wife and child. To any observer, they might have appeared like a devoted couple preparing for the miracle of birth. The image tore at Sophia's heart. She wanted to scream, to confront him right there. But something in her twisted chest held her back. She remembered Dr. Patel's warning about her blood pressure. She couldn't risk a dramatic scene that might endanger her baby. With tears streaming, she hurried to the exit, a swirl of pain and fury in her chest. That night, the confrontation she dreaded finally happened. She waited in the living room, lights dimmed, anticipating Julian's late return. When he stepped into the shadows of the foyer, she flicked on the lamp, revealing her tear-stained face. He stared, shock evident in his eyes. He knew he was caught. "You were at the hospital with her, weren't you?" Sophia said quietly. Julian ran a hand through his hair, exhaling a shaky breath. "Sophia, she needed me there. Her pregnancy is complicated, and I had her pregnancy. And what about mine?" Sophia shot back, her voice laced with venom. She felt tremors in her body, and her heart pounded dangerously fast. "I found out I'm at risk for preeclampsia. I could lose this baby if I don't manage my stress. But you weren't there for me. You were with her." Guilt and desperation shadowed his face. "Sophia, you know I care about you and our baby, but Elena has me in a stranglehold. If I don't comply, if I don't show her I'm invested, she'll leak everything. I'm trying to juggle both situations as best I can." She let out a hollow laugh, tears shining in her eyes. "You're not juggling anything but your own selfish interests. You betrayed me. Don't try to paint this as some business obligation. You chose her over me, over your own child. No matter how you spin it, there's no justification for this." His voice rose in agitation. "What do you want me to do, Sophia? Let her destroy us? Have her ruin our child's future because the tabloids catch wind of an affair scandal? I'm trying to handle this without losing everything my family built. That includes you. Don't you dare claim you're doing this for me," she spat. "This is all about you, your image, your fortune, your shame at being caught. You could have chosen to be honest from the start, to face the consequences like a man, but instead you're sneaking around with her under the guise of protection." He reached out again, as though trying to console her. "Sophia, please, let me fix this. I promise I'll find a way to end it." A swirl of conflicting emotions flooded her: anguish, rage, regret. She was exhausted, physically and emotionally, and she could feel her blood pressure spike. She took a few deep breaths, Dr. Patel's warning echoing in her mind. Fighting to maintain control, she stepped back. "I'm done listening to your promises. Get out." For a moment, Julian stood rooted to the spot, reluctant to leave. Yet he didn't push further. Sensing the precariousness of the situation, he nodded gravely. "I'll stay in the guest room tonight." Sophia, arms crossed protectively over her belly, stared at him as he disappeared down the corridor. Her tears flowed freely, and she silently prayed she wouldn't lose herself or her baby to this nightmare. Something had to change, and if Julian refused to truly defend their marriage and their child, she would find a way to defend herself. 2 days later, Sophia sat in her private sitting room, phone clutched in her hand as she listened to the measured tones of Marcus Ward, the private investigator Michael Stevens had recommended. His words offered a grim glimmer of hope. "I used to work for Miss Monroe, so I know her patterns. I can track her finances, her appointments, see if there's any indication the baby isn't Julian's. If we find enough dirt on her, we might be able to negotiate a safe exit." Sophia's mind spun with the weight of it all. If Elena was indeed scamming Julian, that would be cause for relief and, ironically, heartbreak. Because deep down, the existence of a child was at least something real, tangible. If Elena had truly lured Julian into a monstrous lie, it meant her husband's betrayal might be more about lust and ego than fathering a second family. But that logic didn't soothe her bruised heart. Whatever Elena's motives, the affair had happened. The trust was broken. Nevertheless, she recognized that exposing Elena might be the only way to salvage her own baby's future. Marcus Ward requested her assistance, asking for any small details she might have overheard or discovered. Sophia recalled the hush money references, the black duffel bag, the suspicious medical visits. As she relayed everything, part of her felt the cold sting of reality. She was planning a covert war against her husband's mistress. A day passed before Marcus returned with preliminary findings. Through a series of discreet inquiries, he learned that Elena Monroe was indeed pregnant. Multiple doctors confirmed the pregnancy, though none had performed a paternity test yet. As for Elena's finances, large sums of money had been deposited into her accounts monthly for the last few years, originating from different men, as though she had an entire network of benefactors. "This pattern is consistent with her previous cons," Marcus explained. "She seduces wealthy men, claims pregnancy, then demands money to keep quiet. In some cases, she might be pregnant, but the father is rarely the man she's blackmailing." Sophia's stomach churned. Is there any clue as to who the real father might be this time? Not yet, Marcus admitted, but I'll keep digging. Despite the swirl of revelations, Sophia couldn't help feeling a spark of sympathy for Elena. What drove her to orchestrate such elaborate deceptions? Was she driven by pure greed, or did heartbreak and trauma from her own past twist her into this role? Sophia banished those musings. Elena's feelings were not her responsibility. She needed to prioritize her child and her own well-being. Meanwhile, Julian's attempts at reconciliation grew more frequent, though never truly satisfying. He admitted he had become ensnared in Elena's game, that she threatened to reveal their affair to the tabloids and sabotage key business deals. She had demanded financial support for her unborn child, and in a moment of guilt and panic, Julian had complied. He still insisted that if the child were truly his, he wouldn't turn his back on it. Sophia found some perverse sense of relief in the notion that he was uncertain about paternity. Maybe Julian's relationship with Elena wasn't a deep, ongoing love affair but a shallow fling that mutated into a blackmail fiasco. A horrifying betrayal, yes, but perhaps not one that spelled doom for any chance at redemption. That small flicker of hope kept her from finalizing divorce papers or forcibly removing him from her life. As the weeks rolled on, the tension in the Harrington mansion mounted. Staff members tiptoed around fragile tempers. Late at night, when Sophia couldn't sleep, she wandered the garden alone, the moonlight reflecting off the lily pond. She'd gently cradle her pregnant belly, humming lullabies she remembered from childhood, tears trailing down her cheeks. Sometimes she questioned whether she was strong enough to continue, but the soft kicks from within reminded her she had a new life to protect. All the while, Marcus worked his leads, determined to crack Elena's facade. Then one evening, the phone rang, and his urgent voice fluttered through the speaker. "Sophia, you need to come down to the Belmont Hotel on Fifth Avenue. Elena's here, meeting with someone. I have reason to believe it's another potential Mark, or possibly the father of her baby." A surge of adrenaline coursed through her. She knew this was risky. Her doctor had cautioned her against stressful outings, but this might be her chance to witness proof that Elena's child belonged to someone else. She scribbled a note to the head housekeeper that she'd be back soon, in case Julian asked about her whereabouts. Then, with her heart in her throat, she slipped out, hailing a driver to take her to the Belmont. Night had fallen by the time she arrived, golden lights illuminating the grand hotel entrance. She spotted Marcus in a discreet corner of the lobby. He led her to a vantage point behind a row of potted palms where they could observe the bar area. There, in a plush velvet booth, sat Elena Monroe, glamorous, poised, her dark hair falling in artful waves. Across from her, a dashing man in a tailored suit leaned forward, gesturing animatedly. Sophia's pulse hammered. She recognized the man, Vincent Markham, an influential real estate mogul with a reputation for dirty dealings. She'd seen him occasionally at charity galas, always accompanied by different starlets, always with an arrogant grin. Elena and Vincent exchanged hushed words, but their body language spoke volumes, and intimacy, suggested by the way he occasionally brushed her hand, the secret smiles they shared. Marcus discreetly snapped photos with a high-resolution camera, capturing every gesture. Sophia felt her breath catch when Elena reached into her handbag and produced an envelope. She slid it across the table. Vincent opened it, revealing what looked like a sonogram photo. His face broke into a wide smirk. Sophia's heart lurched. Was Vincent the real father? Or was he just another mark in Elena's long con? Suddenly, a shadow fell over them. In a voice as cold as steel, someone hissed, "What are you doing here?" Sophia turned to find Julian standing behind her, his expression a mix of fury and confusion. Her mind reeled. How had he found her? Possibly by tracking her phone or suspecting she was working with an investigator. Marcus narrowed his eyes, but remained calm, lowering the camera. "Julian, we're just spying." Julian's voice seethed. He turned to Sophia. So this is what you've been doing behind my back. Hiring a pie to investigate Elena, to spy on my business. Sophia could hardly contain her anger. Your business? Julian, she's blackmailing you and you're letting her run rampant. I'm trying to save us from this disaster, he sneered, conflicting emotions raging in his gaze. By sneaking around, betraying my trust with my own friend's pie. She couldn't believe his gall. You're talking about betrayal after what you've done? Don't you see we might have found proof that the baby isn't yours? Look at them, Julian. She motioned to Elena and Vincent. We might stop this madness before it destroys everything. Her raised voice drew attention. Several patrons threw curious glances their way. Fearing a scene, Marcus gently grabbed Julian's arm, urging him to step aside. But Julian, overcome with a mix of guilt, frustration and fear, wrenched free and stalked toward Elena's table. Julian, wait, Sophia pleaded, ignoring the painful throb in her temple. Before she could stop him, he rounded the corner into Elena's view. Elena's eyes widened, swiftly shoving the envelope into her handbag. Vincent shot a sidelong glance, annoyance flickering across his features. Julian pinned his gaze on Elena. We need to talk. Elena stood up abruptly, her posture defensive. What are you doing here, Julian? She hissed, glancing nervously at Vincent. Sophia moved closer, her breath coming in shallow pants. She prayed she wouldn't collapse from the intensity of the moment. Julian, voice trembling with suppressed rage, said, Are you playing us all? Is Vincent the father? Elena's expression hardened. You're out of line. I told you I'm done with you for the night. I can have a conversation with a friend without your permission. Vincent pushed his chair back, sizing Julian up. Is there a problem, Harrington? Perhaps you should leave the lady alone. She's in a delicate condition. A wave of nausea hit Sophia as the confrontation escalated. She recognized that if this got out, tabloids could spin it into a sensational scandal. She tried to step between them, her voice shaky. Let's not do this here. Elena's gaze flickered to Sophia's pregnant belly, then back to Julian. She let out a mocking laugh. Look at the two of you tagging along, desperate for scraps of information. You don't own me, Julian, and the last time I checked, your wife had no right to pry into my affairs. But you're carrying his child. Sophia shot back, anger and heartbreak flooding her. He's the one paying for your so-called privacy, or is that not enough for you? Vincent narrowed his eyes, stepping protectively closer to Elena. All right, I've had enough. Elena, do you want me to call security? He placed a possessive hand on Elena's arm. In that singular gesture, everything about their dynamic became painfully clear. There was more between them than a casual acquaintance. Elena's cheeks flushed red, clearly torn between playing the victim or continuing her ruse. Julian clenched his fists, glancing from Elena to Vincent, a storm of betrayal raging in his eyes. Marcus quickly intervened, leaning in to whisper harshly, We're done here. If we make a scene, the tabloids will have a field day. Let's go. For a split second, Sophia locked eyes with Elena, searching for any trace of remorse or fear. Instead, she found only defiance, fueled by cunning. Elena had built her life on illusions and manipulations. Empathy was a foreign concept to her. Choking back sobs, Sophia allowed Marcus to guide her toward the exit. Julian followed, stiff and silent. They filed into the elevator, the tension suffocating. Not a word was spoken until they emerged onto the street, the cool night air hitting them like a slap. Julian finally spun to face Sophia, his voice choking with anger and desperation. Why couldn't you just trust me to handle this? Now, you've pushed Elena into a corner. Who knows what she'll do next? Sophia pressed a hand to her throbbing head, tears brimming. I'm sorry my attempts to save our family from a pathological liar inconvenienced you. But if you had been honest from the start, none of this would be happening. Marcus, sensing the futility of further argument, hailed a car. As the headlights from passing traffic danced across their strained faces, Sophia felt the ache in her chest deepen. This war was far from over. But at least one truth was now undeniable. Eleanor Munro wasn't loyal to Julian. She was playing every angle to secure her fortune. Sophia prayed they would uncover the final piece of evidence, the undeniable proof that Julian was not the father. Only then could they break free from Elena's hold. Yet, as she climbed into the waiting car, she clutched her belly protectively, a sinking feeling telling her the worst was yet to come. Days passed in a tense limbo. Neither Sophia nor Julian made any move to leave the mansion, yet they lived like strangers, each consumed by their respective turmoil. Any conversation quickly escalated into harsh words. Exhaustion weighed on Sophia, physically and emotionally. Marcus Ward diligently compiled evidence, hoping to prove that Vincent Markham was the father of Elena's baby, or, at the very least, that Elena had multiple partners, none of whom could be Julian. But progress was slow. Elena had grown savvy over the years, leaving behind a trail of misleading information. One day, Marcus discovered that Elena was traveling to an exclusive private clinic out of state, presumably for advanced prenatal testing. He was determined to infiltrate that clinic and see if he could gather a direct record of paternity. Meanwhile, Julian's business dealings suffered. Rumors of impropriety and scandal started to swirl through Greenwood Hills and beyond. Board members questioned his ability to maintain composure under pressure, major investors grew skittish, and the Harrington name appeared in gossipy whispers on social media, though no official scandal had broken yet. Julian spent countless hours on damage control. His father, Robert Harrington, even made an unexpected visit to the mansion, demanding answers. The patriarch was a stern man, rarely expressing warmth, and he glared at his son with palpable disappointment. "I invested a fortune in your success," Robert growled, arms folded across his chest as they stood in the grand library. "Yet I keep hearing about these indiscretions. If your mother were alive to see this," he shook his head in dismay, letting the sentence dangle. Julian's face turned ashen. "I'm handling it, father. Trust me, I'll resolve it." "See that you do," Robert snapped, before storming out. The Harrington Empire was based on the illusion of perfection, and any crack threatened to bring it all down. Sophia felt no satisfaction in Julian's predicament. Despite everything, part of her still cared for him. She found herself lying awake at night, wondering if they could ever rediscover love, if forgiveness was even possible. But as her belly grew heavier, so did the burden of betrayal. In the midst of this tension, an unexpected ally came to her. Christine Parker, an old university friend who now worked as a family therapist, visited under the pretense of offering moral support. She listened quietly to Sophia's tearful recounting of the last few months, then gently advised her. "You need to put yourself and the baby first," Christine said softly. "Whatever Julian does or doesn't do, you can't sacrifice your own well-being for the sake of appearances." Sophia sobbed, leaning against a velvet cushion. "I used to believe love could conquer anything, but now I don't know. Every day is a new heartbreak." Christine's gaze was sympathetic. "Sometimes love alone isn't enough if it's not backed by honesty, respect, and mutual care. You have to decide what's best for you. Is it healing this marriage or walking away?" Sophia bit her lip, tears seeping silently. She couldn't envision a future without the father of her child, but she also couldn't continue living with this constant betrayal. She realized with a pang that her mother still knew nothing of the details, traveling abroad and oblivious to her daughter's agony. She yearned for maternal comfort, but it would be weeks before Maria returned. That night, Sophia confronted Julian once more. She found him slumped in his home office, tie undone, papers strewn across the mahogany desk. The faint smell of whiskey hung in the air. When he looked up, hollow-eyed, her heart twisted. This was a man unraveling under the weight of his own mistakes. "Julian," she began softly, stepping into the room. She wanted to lash out, to demand an apology. But the words caught in her throat when she saw the depth of his despair. "Are you okay?" He let out a bitter laugh. "No. My father thinks I'm a disgrace. My business is on the brink of collapse, and my wife can barely look at me." She sat in the leather armchair opposite him, her swollen feet throbbing. "Tell me the truth. Do you still have feelings for Elena?" He rubbed his tired eyes. "No. It was lust, stupidity, a moment of weakness. Then she trapped me with blackmail. I was too arrogant to see it coming and too cowardly to admit it to you. I'm sorry, Sophia, for everything." A fragile silence stretched between them. At last, she whispered, "I want to believe you, but there's so much damage, so much hurt." He looked down at his hands. "I don't deserve forgiveness. But if there's any chance at all, that this marriage can be saved, I'll fight for it. I just need to break free from Elena's hold." In that moment, Sophia realized she did not hate him as much as she wanted to. She despised what he had done, but the love they once shared hadn't fully died. It was battered, bruised, on life support, but still there. For the sake of their unborn child, she was willing to wait for proof that he was not Elena's baby's father. If that proof came, maybe they could begin to rebuild. As she rose from her chair, she paused at the door. "Marcus Ward might have news soon. I hope for all our sakes that it's good." Julian nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes. In that quiet exchange, they formed an unspoken truce. For the next few days, they would endure, waiting for the final revelation that could set them on a path of either healing or destruction. Then came the day that changed everything. Sophia was in the nursery, examining the newly delivered crib, when she heard frantic footsteps in the corridor. One of the household staff, Miriam Carter, burst in, face pale. "Miss S. Harrington, Miss Monroe is here. She's in the foyer, demanding to see Mr. Harrington." Miriam stammered. Sophia's heart kicked into overdrive. She glanced at the half-assembled crib, her sanctuary of hope, and felt dread coil in her stomach. Why is Elena here? Mustering courage, she followed Miriam down the sweeping staircase, each step echoing her mounting anxiety. Elena stood in the grand foyer, an elegant coat draped over her shoulders, her belly visibly prominent. She clenched an envelope in her hand like a weapon. Her gaze flickered to Sophia, a sneer curling her lips. "We need to talk," Elena declared, her voice echoing against marble walls. Sophia refused to show weakness, crossing her arms. "Julian isn't here. Whatever you have to say, you can say to me." A flicker of irritation crossed Elena's eyes. Nevertheless, she lifted the envelope and waved it. "I have the paternity results. I'm sure you're dying to see them." Sophia's stomach flipped. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for, the result that could free or doom them. She motioned to the drawing room, not wanting to conduct this drama in front of gawking staff. Inside, Elena shut the door, her posture full of bravado. Sophia tried to keep her composure, though her heart was thudding painfully. "Well?" she demanded, voice trembling. "Whose baby is it?" Elena opened the envelope, extracting a document. She slid it across the polished table towards Sophia. With trembling fingers, Sophia picked it up. Her eyes skimmed over the text, scanning for the crucial line, "Probability of paternity for Julian Harrington, 0%. Sophia's breath caught. She read and reread those words, her vision blurring with tears. Relief, anger, and confusion all warred inside her. She pressed a hand to her chest, adrenaline surging. "Julian isn't the father?" Elena let out a scornful laugh, one hand draped over her pregnant belly. "Believe me, I'm as surprised as you are. I thought he was, but it turns out it's someone else. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Vincent Markham, Elena smirked. Among others, but yes, it appears Vincent's paternal claim is the strong contender. She shrugged, feigning nonchalance. No matter, Julian has been generous with me, and I expect that to continue. Rage flared in Sophia's veins. You expect him to pay you after you blackmailed him, after you threatened to ruin our lives with a child that isn't even his? Elena's expression hardened. He agreed to support me. That was our arrangement, remember? The paternal details were just an unfortunate oversight. Her tone dripped with insincere regret. But I'm confident Julian won't want the press to find out he's been paying me all these months. Father or not. That would be humiliating, wouldn't it? Sophia bristled. You won't walk away from this unscathed. We have evidence you've run the same scheme before. I doubt you want the authorities digging around in your affairs, especially if you've been extorting multiple men. Elena's cheek twitched. A flicker of uncertainty. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you, Sophia retorted. Stop blackmailing Julian. Walk away with whatever conscience you have left. Otherwise, I'll see to it that you're charged with fraud and extortion. I'm done being your victim. Elena's eyes narrowed. She hesitated, as though weighing her options, then let out a short, bitter laugh. I expected more from you, Sophia. But I guess one underestimated your backbone. Rage burned in Sophia's chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. Leave. And don't come back. A tense silence followed, the two women glaring at each other. At last, Elena turned on her heel, heading to the door. She paused in the doorway. Tell Julian the game isn't over yet, she hissed, especially if he tries to smear my reputation. Without further explanation, she stormed out, leaving Sophia trembling in the aftermath. As soon as she was gone, Sophia sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. She felt lightheaded, relief and anger swirling like a maelstrom. Julian wasn't the father. Their marriage, battered and bruised, might yet survive this. She just needed to figure out how to handle Elena's final threat. Gathering her strength, she glanced once more at the paternity test. A swirling sense of triumph took hold. Elena's scheme had been exposed for what it was. Still, a flicker of sorrow remained. Julian had indeed betrayed her physically, but at least he hadn't fathered another child outside their marriage. Sophia placed an urgent call to Julian, urging him to come home. When he arrived, disheveled and wary, she handed him the test results. His eyes scanned the document, and a mixture of emotions, relief, shock, regret played across his features. So it's not mine, he murmured, sinking into a nearby chair. Sophia folded her arms, swallowing a lump in her throat. No, she was scamming you. He rubbed his forehead. I can't believe this. All this time, I thought. But you found the proof. You did what I couldn't. She watched him carefully, noting the dark circles under his eyes. This doesn't erase the fact that you cheated on me. It doesn't wipe away the months of lies, but it changes the dynamic at least. Julian nodded, shame coloring his cheeks. I know. And I'm so sorry, Sophia. I can't express how much I regret hurting you. Silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken pain. Eventually she exhaled, pressing a hand to her belly. I need to think about what's best for me and the baby. Whether that future includes you depends on how you handle things from here. Elena threatened to keep blackmailing you. He clenched his fists. She won't get another cent from me. I'll have my legal team handle it. We'll bury her threats if she tries anything. Sophia studied him. This was the man she once admired, confident, resourceful, protective. She wondered how much of that had been tarnished by his betrayal, and how much still shone beneath the rubble. At length, she spoke softly, I want you to come with me to my next prenatal appointment. No more excuses, no more cancellations. Julian's eyes met hers, sincerity flickering. I'll be there. I promise. All right, she whispered. We'll start there. Over the following weeks, a tentative pattern emerged. Julian indeed cut ties with Elena. His legal team, aided by Michael Stevens, threatened countermeasures if she exposed any fabricated details to the press. With the paternity results and evidence of her extortion attempts, Elena's leverage was drastically weakened. She vanished from Greenwood Hills for the time being, presumably to pursue some new scheme. Vincent Markham made no statements, though rumors swirled that he too was ensnared in her web. Slowly, Sophia and Julian began to rebuild lines of communication. He accompanied her to the obstetrician, holding her hand during ultrasounds, quietly marveling at their baby's heartbeat. He made an effort to be present, to shoulder more responsibilities at home, and to arrange a lighter work schedule. Yet the wounds of betrayal didn't vanish overnight. On more than one occasion, Sophia caught herself recoiling from his touch, haunted by images of him comforting Elena. He understood that he needed to earn back every ounce of her trust. One evening, they walked through the estate gardens, pausing by the rose arbor. As they breathed in the soft fragrance of blooms, Julian slipped his hand into hers. "Remember when we used to come here at night, talking about our dreams, our future?" he asked, voice tinged with nostalgia. She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. "I remember." It felt like a lifetime ago. He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not naive enough to think a few weeks of good behavior will fix everything, but I'm committed to being the husband you deserve, the father our child deserves." Sophia gazed up at the starlit sky. In the hush of the garden, crickets serenading them, she felt a pang of cautious hope. "One step at a time," she whispered. As the final weeks of her pregnancy approached, Sophia found herself confronted by a swirl of emotions, a cautious optimism that she and Julian might piece their marriage back together, and a lingering fear that he might falter again. True to his word, Julian remained by her side, especially after her doctor confirmed her risk of preeclampsia was still high. They set up a nursery together, complete with pastel blue walls and soft plush toys. They took an infant CPR class, practicing on little plastic dolls while sharing uneasy laughs. He also made a formal statement to the Harrington board, acknowledging unspecified personal challenges, but assuring them he had regained control. The scandal, it seemed, was on the brink of fizzling out altogether. Elena's disappearance, perhaps aided by hush money from Vincent Markham, ensured no explosive revelations came to light. For a wealthy clan like the Harringtons, silence was golden. On a particularly warm afternoon, Sophia received an unexpected visitor, her mother, Maria Ross, back from her travels. The older woman took one look at her daughter's face, the shadows under her eyes, and the forced smile, and demanded, "What's happened here?" Sophia, tears trembling in her eyes, poured out the entire story. Maria listened, aghast, occasionally shaking her head in disbelief. "I had no idea you were suffering like this," she murmured, hugging Sophia close. "If I'd known, I would have come back in a heartbeat." Later, Maria marched up to Julian, who met her gaze with humility. Without preamble, she said, "If you hurt my daughter again, you'll have me to answer to." Julian bowed his head respectfully. "I understand, Mrs. Ross. I'm doing everything I can to make it right." Maria gave a curt nod. "Good. Now go help Sophia with the groceries. She shouldn't be straining herself in her condition." In that moment, the tension eased slightly, replaced by the warmth of maternal oversight. Slowly, the Harrington mansion felt less like a prison and more like a home again. Julian and Sophia shared gentle smiles over breakfast. She found him reading parenting books, scribbling notes on topics like bonding and feeding schedules. The fractured trust between them didn't vanish, but each day became a small step toward healing. Then, 3 weeks before her due date, Sophia experienced a sharp pain in her abdomen, followed by dizziness. Panicked, Julian rushed her to the hospital. Doctor, Patel confirmed her blood pressure was dangerously high and recommended early induction to prevent further risks to mother and child. For hours, Sophia labored in the delivery room, gripping Julian's hand in a haze of pain and fear. He stayed by her side, whispering words of encouragement, tears gleaming in his eyes as she gasped for breath. When at last their child was born, a tiny, beautiful girl with a robust cry, they both broke down. In that raw, precious moment, it was as if the heartbreak and betrayal receded into the background. All that mattered was this new life, a symbol of hope and the possibility of a fresh start. Thank you for joining us on this intense, emotional journey filled with heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately, a glimmer of hope. If this story of a millionaire husband straying, a cunning mistress's twisted schemes, and a pregnant wife left to face life-threatening complications alone has kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to show your support. Like this video if you felt every pulse of drama in your heart. Share it with friends who love jaw-dropping real-life fiction, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories. Who knows, our next tale might dive even deeper into the hidden layers of love, secrets, and redemption. Your subscription and engagement mean the world to us and help us bring you even more captivating stories you won't want to miss. Until next time, stay safe, cherish those you love, and remember, truth always comes to light, no matter how dark the secret.